Marcy, he's saying, get us going on the recording. Thanks. Because this, Bob, I know this unit could go viral within minutes after we get through with him today. Judge Chin, you need to be careful judging this panel today. Janet had me judge the mud sock competition in November, the district competition in December, the state competition in January. I saw them over the weekend in the nationals, and now we see them today. You can't get rid of this team once you start judging them. They just kind of stay with you. So be very conscious of that today. To Janet and to Alana, who worked so hard with this group, thank you for having us back, and we're honored to have the national director of this program, Bob Lemming, and the state coordinator in Indiana, Tim Colgreen, on the screen with us today. We're glad they're here. I brought you two great friends. Judge Chin, you want to say good morning to them?
Lovely. Good morning, Indiana. My name is Gus Chin. I'm a municipal judge from Utah.
Candy, unmute if you can.
All right. Good morning. I'm Candida Steele, and I'm retired as a judge on the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals, and I've been in the program for about 20 years now, so I look forward to hearing your excellent presentation, I'm sure.
It will be, I am sure. Marcy's rubbing her fingers, which means either they're itching or she wants us to hurry. So introduce yourselves to us, and we'll let you work a little while.
Hello, we are the seniors of Unit 4 from Team Indiana. My name is Kyle Bragg, and I look forward to attending the University of Florida to study economics and statistics.
Wow.
My name is Max Anderson, and I plan on attending Indiana University this fall to study business management and political science.
My name is Bradley Kelly. I also plan on attending Indiana University to major in political science and attain a minor in business administration.
My name is Nikhil Datar. I will be attending Harvard and studying computer science and statistics, and our teacher is Ms. Janet Chandler.
Sure is. And Alana Kane worked with the unit yesterday, so I know you got some qualified and talented people with you. I want to tell you, going to Kyle, I think it's you going to Florida. I wish you good luck in everything but intercollegiate athletics. We don't want you to get too carried away.
Thank you.
Let me read the question to you just for the recording sake, and then we'll just let you have it the rest of the way. We're going to do question 2 today with you. That's the one we picked, and it's about investigative responsibilities. This is George Mason at the Philadelphia Convention. His quote's in the middle of this. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they, quote, are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers, unquote. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, in any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? And how effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers? You ready to go? Take over.
Representative Barbara Jordan said,
If society today allows wrongs to go unchallenged, the impression is created that those wrongs have the approval of the majority.
Max and I believe Congress's investigatory power has been ineffective. The first congressional investigation was in 1792 into General Arthur St. Clair for his military defeat at the hand of Native Americans. The investigation was inconclusive, showing ineffectiveness.
modern hearings, such as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, have been increasingly partisan, making it challenging for Congress to use hearings for pending legislation, federal programs, and pressing issues.
Bradley and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues. Congressional investigations have been effective. The Kavod Committee investigated claims of corruption into the Buchanan administration. President Buchanan survived, but the committee's effectiveness opened the door for Congress to check the executive moving forward.
The Church Committee saw both Democrats and Republicans work together to investigate illegal and unethical activities of federal agencies like the CIA. The investigation led to the inception of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, requiring warrants for surveillance.
The congressional power of oversight differs from investigation. Oversight is proactive, enabling Congress to require reporting from the bureaucracy and use legislative agencies to oversee executive actions. The investigatory power is much more reactive and allows congressional committees to make inquiries, subpoena information, and hold witnesses in contempt.
We believe the power of oversight is more significant than the power of investigation due to its proactive nature. Congressional agencies, such as the Congressional Budget Office, check the executive branch. The CBO was established in 1974 to diffuse tensions with President Nixon, ensuring the executive branch does not interfere with the congressional power of the purse.
Additionally, executive agencies submit congressionally mandated reports. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2019 required the Secretary of the Navy to submit reports if they intended to utilize a provisional waiver to extend a naval vessel's deployment period. These energetic measures prevent offenses from occurring.
Conversely, congressional investigations are reactive. Following the Iran-Contra affair, congressional committees indicted several officials, including Secretary of Defense Weinberger. However, the illegal funding of Nicaraguan Contras had already occurred. The ability of congressional oversight to check bureaucracy makes it more significant than the investigatory power.
Pyle and I believe Congress has been effective in its use of oversight powers, given their broad interpretation. Article 1, Section 1 states all legislative powers are vested in a Congress of the United States. This vagueness enables Congress to institute its own understanding of oversight powers.
Congressional effectiveness was brought to the forefront during the Teapot Dome scandal of 1922. This was the first instance where a member of the executive cabinet was tried and convicted, following an investigation into the leasing of United States petroleum reserves to private companies.
Subsequently, McGrain v. Daugherty solidified the understanding that congressional investigations have a legislative purpose, with the necessary and proper clause. Today, Congress effectively used oversight to check President Trump following the Capitol insurrection.
Max and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues regarding effective use of oversight powers due to the partisan impact on congressional efficiency. The Brookings Research Institute found oversight scrutiny is significantly higher when different parties control the two branches.
Congressman Bob Barr emphasized the need for clarification, regardless of perceived effectiveness, stating,
"It's high time for some congressional oversight backbone." That concludes our prepared testimony, and we are now ready for follow-up questioning.
Before Judge Steele begins, it's really interesting. Bob Barr did say that, and so they said, okay, and then they investigated him. You got to be careful of what you ask for sometimes, I guess, right? Judge Steele, you want to inquire?
Sure. So what powers, if any, has Congress ceded to the executive and judicial branches?
With regards to power, more recently, we've seen the president have a greater ability to go to war and conduct war in comparison to what Congress has. With respect to that, we have not declared war since World War II, and we have been involved in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, among others.
Congress has also ceded its power and gone against the non-delegation doctrine. It's given powers to the executive branch, specifically executive agencies, such as the IRS. It's given it up its Article 1, Section 8 power to lay and collect taxes to the IRS, especially the IRS has the actual authority on deciding how they actually will go about collecting those taxes.
One of the biggest instances that we see Congress delegate authority is through the Chevron doctrine, the two-pronged test that lets executive agencies interpret statutes that are not clear using the standard of arbitrary and capricious. This has recently come to light in many Supreme Court cases, including Michigan versus EPA.
Additionally, in investigations, executive branch referral is one way in which the Congress is able to delegate criminal offenses to the executive branch.
Can you expand a little bit on the Chevron doctrine, please? Explain what it is.
Yes, so the Chevron doctrine, one of the first step, which was established in the case of United States versus Meade Corp, was actually that just even determining if the Chevron doctrine actually applies to certain cases. And before and after that, then step one of the doctrine actually occurs, which is determining whether Congress was explicitly giving its powers to the agencies and determining if the agencies if those were arbitrary and capricious. And then the step two, the Chevron doctrine, is determining if Congress implicitly gave those if their powers to the agencies, then if the agency interpretation was reasonable, then the courts have to defer to that interpretation of the actual of how the executive agency carries it out.
Good, thank you.
Your Honor, Judge Chin.
Thank you. You have mentioned there's a difference in opinion as to Congress's effectiveness. You mentioned, for example, the FISA court. The FISA court that resulted from investigation has been problematic. So has it really always been effective in bringing about agencies or legislation post-investigation? I mean, Congress's use of that power.
I believe it kind of varies with respect to whichever situation is being dealt with. In some cases, instances are found, other instances, something is not, and that something could be vindication or necessarily a need for legislation, which again can vary.
Can you think of any particular legislation that has been significant in our country?
Only 2 years ago, in 2019, we actually saw Congress investigating generic drug manufacturing companies. And this started back in 2014, but really picked up pace in 2019 and it had bipartisan support on this issue because these generic drug manufacturing companies were charging excessive prices to consumers of their product. And there was actually federal legislation that was passed through the CREATES Act of 2019, specifically targeted at reducing these inflated prices.
I would also argue that on a whole, the power of the purse is a very useful legislation that Congress is able to implement. And this goes all the way back to Federalist 51, where the founders talked about how we needed to create checks and balances between our branches to ensure that proper legislation was put in place to restrict executive agencies.
Thank you.
Judge, okay, thank you. Some of the time today, we've been discussing how Congress chooses or chooses not to investigate its own members. Just in the recent few months, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Mo Brooks. Marjorie Taylor Greene said some things and was stripped of all her committees. The matter of Matt Gaetz appears to have been punted to the judicial branch of government. The state representative from my state had Vice President Mike Pence from your state having to run for his life and be sequestered in the basement of the Capitol. And Mo Brooks appears to have gotten off scot-free, and he's running for the Senate down here. If you were a member of the House or a member of the Senate, what malfeasance would have to rise to a certain level to make you decide it was time to investigate somebody or not spend the time and the money to do that?
In my opinion, I would reference the terms that are listed within the Constitution, similar to that of impeachment, where treason or bribery should occur for a congressional member to be investigated, as well as possibly for moral crimes and violations. And in the case of Matt Gaetz, this was a moral investigation, and the Ethics Committee handled it as such.
Quite simply, I would put it in terms of if it hits the news, anything that gets great media attention should be looked at, because if it is not, if we go and leave it unanswered, that situation could grow more significant and bigger to where it becomes a very large question. We saw that recently with the border crisis, where it had gone unanswered for a long time, and over time, it became a bigger and bigger issue for the Biden administration.
Media participation can have a huge impact on the ability to censure our congressmen. We saw this in the Army McCarthy hearings, with Senator Joseph McCarthy eventually losing a lot of his reputation and receiving letters of reprimand after he conducted himself in a very unprofessional manner when investigating claims of communist allegations into the State Department. And so that would show a very good example of, as Bradley touched on, when the media becomes too involved, an investigation and potential censorship does need to occur.
Thank you. That was good. I appreciate that. Judge Chin, if you don't mind, I'm going to come back to you and give Judge Steele a minute to
Not at all.
call taken care of.
Given what you've just said with respect to the media, would the media not serve as a good check on Congress's abuse or ineffectiveness by exposing it to the general public so they can make determinations as to what is expected?
I believe that it can be helpful to some extent. However, more recently, I would say that it is not very helpful, with 24-hour news being the primary source of news for people throughout the United States and the world for that matter. It really just becomes all about ratings and getting people to click on their article and watch their news outlet or their particular TV show. And once that happens, you kind of lose some credibility, and therefore would make the use of the media or the involvement of the media not so beneficial.
I would agree with my colleague Bradley and would also cite that the media has heightened polarization around these investigations in past years. And this can be seen in instances such as the Mueller report, where a lot of these issues arose due to polarization. And that's why I would potentially advocate for some sort of secret hearings so that congressmen can make proper judgments without necessarily having to worry about their constituent base.
But let's jump on that. Wouldn't secret hearings create more partisanship, because then the people who elected these members would have no idea what's taking place?
I do understand your issue that you have with that, and which is why I would kind of believe in the sense of having a representative or a senator reach out to their constituents, and maybe even their state legislator, to provide some aid for them to get the feeling of their constituents, left, right, and center, to involve them to figure out should they vote yes, should they vote no, or what they should do with regard to a situation, so that it is involving the people and in turn also remove some of that partisanship.
I believe that the implementation of a special counsel would also ensure that these conflicts of interest are kind of mitigated. And I believe this can be seen in several recent investigations, such as the Mueller report, where Robert Mueller kind of stood as a center ground and was able to ensure that bipartisanship takes place within these investigations, so that we maybe could institute secret hearings without necessarily having the constituents worry about increased partisanship.
I do agree with my colleague Max on the fact that we should institute some sort of special counsel. We've only really seen these instituted when they've been investigations into the president, but I do think that on other investigations they could be implemented. And on the subject of secret sessions, I don't believe that there's something that's very feasible, because since 1825 in the House of Representatives, we've only seen 6 secret sessions actually been brought forward. The last one being 2008 into the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And so unless a representative, or if it's in the Senate, unless a senator brings forth a motion to actually have a secret session, then I don't believe that it's even feasible. And I don't think they would want to, specifically because of what you mentioned, Mr. Chin.
Well, I recognize the difficulty in implementing these, the feasibility of these secret hearings. I think the Congress's overbearing ability to focus on elections when they look at these investigations is incredibly important and requires the need for these secret hearings. During the Benghazi investigation, House Majority Leader McCarthy was caught on Fox News stating that one of the biggest benefits of the investigation was that Hillary Clinton's numbers were dropping. I see my time has expired. May I finish my thought?
Go ahead, finish it.
And I just think this goes to show that the ability of congressmen to worry so much about what the people are viewing on their investigatory procedures shows the need for these secret hearings.
Great job, Indiana. Well done. Thank you very much. And now the judges will provide some feedback to you.
Judge Steele, has your tea helped out a little bit? Have you got your voice?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am. Has your tea helped your cough a little
Yes,
bit?
it has. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Good.
So I'll go ahead and say how wonderfully you all did. That was a really lovely presentation. Thank you. Not the least of which, starting out with Barbara Jordan was a great start.
Yeah.
And bringing up the 230 hearings was excellent. The FISA hearings was really good. War Powers, Bob Barr. I appreciated your discussion of the Chevron doctrine and what I understand it as, and I think you do too, is that it gives, under the circumstances that you so well described, the ability of the agency to define what is an issue that may be unclear rather than Congress. So you did that very nicely. I think you did a beautiful job. And I hope that you all you must have been as inspired by this program as we all are, or you wouldn't be here on the last day. And so I hope that you'll use, those of you going into political science in particular, will use this experience to launch yourself into your careers. And I look forward to you representing us in local, state, or federal government down the road, or in the judiciary. And I'm sure you will do an absolutely wonderful job. Thank you. You did a fabulous job today, so I know you'll do fine.
Pretty good, Judge Chin.
Thank you. Very well done. I agree with Judge Steele. I particularly like the fact that you responded to her question in explaining the Chevron doctrine. Even judges do not know everything, and occasionally we have to ask counsel to enlighten us. So very loyally in your response, very scholarly in terms of how you approached it, in terms of mentioning the Church Commission, the FISA court, and being responsive, talking about the Iran-Contra group, referencing the constitutional provision, Teapot Dome issue, and the issue of partisanship. So very well covered. You have demonstrated an academic knowledge that will serve you well as you pursue your individual careers, and we wish you well.
Thank you, Judge. Kyle, you accomplished something on behalf of your team that's difficult to do. I couldn't help but notice when you mentioned the Chevron doctrine that all three of us stopped watching and picked up our pens and started writing. The minute you mentioned that, it was the first mention today. Anytime you can get all three judges to stop listening and start writing, well, we kept listening, but start writing, then your team has accomplished something pretty brave. Judge Chin, I couldn't help today but think about Lee Hamilton. Lee Hamilton would have loved listening to this today. He would have absolutely loved this hearing. He would have adored it. I think most of y'all know who he is, but if you don't, go look him up and read about him.
He loved this program.
He would have loved this program. I think
He
may have
did.
been.
He did.
I think he did. Yeah, but I think Bob.
I've been to a reception where he spoke about how wonderful this program was.
Bob, he was involved, wasn't he? Yeah, sure was.
Go ahead and finish your comments.
Well,
He
I
was
was just
very,
gonna say
very
thank
involved, went to many competitions in the past. Great guy.
He would have loved this today and admired you. I was going to say thank Bob Lemming and Tim Colgreen on the days y'all get tired and you think, do I need to raise another few dollars or something else? This hearing today is why the two of you do what you do. And we are all so grateful to these four. And to you, Janet, nice job as always. Congratulations to you. And Marcy, you can help us out. Thank you very much.